Good evening, all. Just to note that obviously the chair has not arrived yet, so we'll wait until the chair arrives before starting the meeting.
Live stream audio check, 1, 2, 3.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the late start. Put it down to traffic issues. I was on my way back from Clacton. Got to Clacton to Colchester, no further. Crawling along. Welcome to this meeting of the Local Plan Committee. I'm Chair, Councillor Tim Young. Apologies to my colleagues on the committee as well for the few minutes late start. The meeting is being live streamed and will be available to view after the meeting on the Council's YouTube channel. A few matters of housekeeping just to begin with. Action in the event of an emergency. There are no practice alarms planned for this evening, so if an alarm sounds, please evacuate the grand jury room by going back through the main entrance and down the stairs or via the staircase at the side of the building and then to the car park behind the Town Hall in St Ronald Street. We will have a short break at 7:30 p.m. and please would speakers use microphones at all times and speak directly into the microphone, and would participants please mute the microphones when not speaking. Right, I'm just going to go round the committee, ask for introductions, each member and officer to introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Councillor McSpinless, Shrubbery Board.
Councillor Rees-Smithson, Tiptree Ward.
Councillor Faith Smalls, Old Heath, The Hive and Row Hedge.
Councillor Sean Kelly, Wivenhoe Ward.
Councillor Vanessa Moffat, Mile End Ward.
Councillor Kirkby Taylor, Castle Ward.
Councillor Martin Parsons, Mersey and Pyfleet Ward.
Councillor Andrew Ellis, Markstay and Layer Ward.
Councillor Elizabeth Akinyemi, Greenstead Ward.
Shelley Blackaby, Planning Policy Officer.
Laura Golding, Planning Policy Officer. Yuding Gimaroki, Historic Buildings and Areas Officer.
Sandra Scott, Place Strategy Manager.
And Simon Gaines, Joint Hedge Planning.
Robert Carmichael, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you, one and all. We might be joined by Councillor Barber online, I understand, but if we do, he won't be able to vote, but he can contribute. And I've had a message from Karen Syrett also saying that she may be able to join us later. Emergency vet appointment, apparently. Substitutions, are there any, Rob?
None, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, urgent items, there are none. Declarations of interest. Are there any members who've got any declaration of interest on the items on the agenda tonight? No? Okay, good. We'll carry on. Minutes. Minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of June 2024 before the Committee for Confirmation. Any points of accuracy needs to be raised? Yes, Rob.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for the interruption. On the copy that was sent out, there was an inaccuracy with the attendance, which has been corrected for the copy that's before the Chair tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Can we confirm then as a true record? All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Move on to item 6, which is the general have your say. I have 7 speakers who've indicated, so we will try and get it in within the half-hour limit. Everybody knows the rules of 3 minutes and bell after 2 and then after 3. I got 3 members of the public and 4 councillors, it would seem. So we'll start with Councillor Martin Warnes, please. It looks... Yeah, what I'm going to do, because it looks like they're all on Middlewick, is I'm going to ask officers to respond at the end of everybody's contribution rather than one at a time, in case there's repetition. Thank you very much, Councillor Warnes.
Thank you, Chair. Having read the agenda papers in front of you, 2 things stand out. One is that the evidence for dropping Middlewick from the local plan continues to mount, and that the survey results show, on the one hand, that the respondents are wedded to their car as the main mode of transport, and on the other hand, they see low-rise housing as the type of housing they would see for future housing development need. So the question is, how do you reconcile these 2 standout findings with the need to review the local plan allocations we currently have and maintain the 5-year housing supply needed to ward off planning by appeal, which would result if we are to maintain a valid local plan or a 5-year housing supply going forward. For me, the two issues that you need to grapple with are recognition that the continued allocation of 1,000 homes on Middlewick Ranges is looking and indeed has become increasingly unsound. And B, if taken out, where do you make up those numbers elsewhere? So my purpose of addressing you this evening is to say to you that the discrediting of the Stantec report, the revelation of information reportedly being withheld from members, and the recognition of the ecological importance of the acid grasslands on which the firing ranges once stood, leads me to continue to say that if you are so minded to withdraw Middlewick from the local plan, I will support you. Given all the good work that was done in assessing land known as West Tay for suitability for housing development, in my view, we should not waste the collective knowledge, and we should consider bringing this to the attention of Angela Rayner for consideration for Newtown building going forward as a way of maintaining the integrity of housing development in future allocation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Warnes. Next speaker is Councillor Dave Harris. Dave, I'm sure you're well aware of the rules of 3 minutes. Thank you very much. When you're ready, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. Well done, Martin. Councillor Martin Warnes, support everything he says. The MOD must know by now that the sale of Middlewick is not desired by local people, indeed all of the councillors I know either. I recall delivering a large petition on behalf of Beerchurch, 3 Beerchurch councillors and 3 Old Heath councillors. Councillor Lee Scorders and I handed that petition in personally to the Ministry of Defence. So, with the knowledge that is coming from all quarters about flawed reports, as Councillor Warren said, on environmental impact on Middlewick, now is the time for action, I believe. There are reports that list the diversity of unique and rare wildlife in the land, reports that stating that insects, plants, shrubs, trees, soil types and animal life that will definitely be impacted adversely. The revelation that birds such as nightingales are in large numbers there, anywhere else than in the UK, it's time for Council to commit to doing an acceleration of the review of the local plan. I asked for 4 things. Obviously, continue to collect and collate the evidence of the site and its correct status as a unique and irreplaceable area. Lots of evidence is already clearly there. As if I didn't know it before, but the visit on the Middlewick exhibition in the town centre showed that. Secondly, prepare for removal of the whole site from the local plan as a site for housing, be brought forward and be ready for that to be happen. And then thirdly, designate the site as a nature reserve for the protective for future. And fourthly, as Councillor Warnes eloquently said, look immediately for a list of replacement sites, either small or larger, for at least the 1,000 homes back into the local plan. Can I continue to ask the officers and councillors to work in unison to achieve these steps in the review now before it's too late? As to the housing numbers that was already been mentioned, we've always built homes in Colchester as the need for housing arrives. We've always stood up to the plate. A replacement site for Middlewick here, the 1,000, how about looking, as Councillor Warren says, where a new community can be built without destruction of such a diverse site as Middlewick? Certainly let's not build a concrete jungle where there is no infrastructure or no will of the political parties or the communities for that matter, because we all know, don't we, it's in the wrong place. So out to the southern areas of Colchester is what Councillor Warren says, I support that, where field upon field are not used for arable or livestock, and where there is space for infrastructure that can serve communities and places where my great-great-great-grandchildren may live, and I'd love them to be. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Next speaker is Dr. Jeremy Dagley. Please. Jeremy, you have 3 minutes, a bell will sound after 2, and then you have finished speaking after the second bell. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Our representation addresses the issue of ecological evidence that's been used to justify the allocation of Middlewick Ranges Local Wildlife Site, CO122, for housing. The original ecology report, conducted by Peter Brett Associates in 2017, which was a field trip, correctly identified over 50 hectares of acid grassland on Middlewick Ranges and over 65 hectares of semi-improved grassland south of Birchbrook Woodland. The subsequent Stantec report contained crucial alterations, whereby certain habitats were reclassified without justification. Over 20 hectares of acid grassland in the north of the site were changed to poor semi-improved grassland. In addition, over 65 hectares of semi-improved grassland in the south were incorrectly labelled as arable land, despite being ecologically valuable permanent grassland. These alterations raise serious questions that remain unanswered to how they came about. The changes artificially enhance the biodiversity net gain, or BNG score, allowing a misleading representation of Middlewick Ranges ecological value to be put forward. The changes contradicted the local wildlife site citation, and this alone should have raised alarm bells at the time. Considering the real habitat value, the BNG score would show a significant biodiversity loss. The Trust, alongside all other nature conservation organisations, is clear that habitat quality is of national importance, supported by the existing comprehensive data from multiple field surveys across many years up to 2024. Given these overt discrepancies in the Stantec report, it should never have been used to support housing at Middlewick. Such an important local wildlife site should never have been considered for development. The ranges encompass over 50 hectares of acid grassland, something I mentioned before, which is exceptional, not only in Essex, but in the UK. As Natural England stated about acid grassland in SSIs, 71% of SSI lowland dry acid grassland sites were less than 5 hectares, with only 6% of those sites, these are SSI sites, notified for their interest being over 10 hectares. Middlewick is 5 times this upper threshold size. To continue to include this allocation will, in our view, render the local plan unsound, as it could be neither justified nor could it be consistent with national policy. It would also fatally undermine the forthcoming Essex Local Nature Recovery Strategy, which has just been up for consultation in Colchester District. With such egregious data discrepancies now exposed, it should be obvious that any previous judgment on the soundness of the plan were based on an entirely false premise. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jeremy. Our next speaker is Glyn Evans. Glyn, you know the score, so you have 3 minutes. I can't do that, I'm afraid. It's under the Constitution. Give them to the clerk.
If you leave them on the desk there,
If you leave them on the desk, we'll collect them later. Thank you, Glyn. Yeah, you have 3 minutes. Your time will start when you start speaking.
The other speakers have been quite eloquent and covered much of what I would have covered. So knowing what some of them were going to say, instead I'll just concentrate on the Council's own published statement on the 16th of October. I'll give you some feedback if I may. Colchester City Council reaffirms its commitment to transparency and environmental protection. In response to recent concerns about the ecological surveys and potential impacts on wildlife, the Council wishes to provide clarity and reassurance about the thoroughness of its planning process. Reassurance, yes please, we're all looking for that tonight. As to the PBA and Stantec reports, it says both reports were produced by the same lead ecologist, with the 2020 report building on the earlier findings to provide a more thorough economic analysis of the site. It wasn't more thorough, it was false, as you've heard. So it's a house of straw built on a fairly decent foundation. The decision to allocate 1,000 homes to Middlewick Ranges was made in June 2017 and submitted to the government in October 2017 before the council received a PBA report. An uninformed decision, by definition. And if I may quote my learned colleague from Wivenhoe, Andrea Luxford-Vaughan, the council is committed to making planning decisions that protect our environment and support sustainable development. I'm really sorry, but Middlewick does the exact opposite. Also, it says, the council understands the concerns regarding potential impacts on wildlife, including species such as nightingales. The brief you gave to the ecologist was only consider botany and invertebrates. So I hate to tell you this, but a nightingale is not an invertebrate. The nightingale is what was declared absent in the Stantec report. Our survey said 59 singing males this summer. There won't be next summer because some of their habitat has been destroyed by the MOD putting a fence up. I'm sure some of you realise that. All relevant evidence will be collated and published at the appropriate time to support the local plan, including that which is relevant to the ecology interests of Middlewick Ranges. Given the very narrow brief that you've given to your ecologist, which is by no means independent, now is the time to introduce these ecologists that have done all of the surveys that Dr. Jeremy Dagley was talking about, and finally introduce them to your ecologist, and better still, to put them in front of the MOD so that the MOD can see sense and recognise a dead parrot when they see one, and not waste more time and public money failing to admit that this is a dead parrot. It's been dead for so long, it stinks to high heaven. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Glenn. Of course, it might be pining for the fields, but we never know. Martin Pugh, please. Martin, you have 3 minutes when you begin speaking, and the same rules apply.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the amazing bunch outside who are standing up for biodiversity of Middlewick Ranges, as they have done for many, many months and years. Today I'm going to talk about the waxcap fungi of Middlewick Ranges, how they stop any proposals for development of any houses in their tracks. I've got a map here of the waxcaps of Middlewick. You can see it's like a rash, and they are all over the place, amazing indicator species. Over 10 species of waxcap fungi have been found in very high densities across the site, including the northern proposed footprint, vividly demonstrating that this land is not poor semi-improved grassland, as falsely claimed by Stantec. These waxcaps, along with the meadow corals and other rare fungi, are irrefutable indicators of ancient unimproved grasslands. We've already added 5 species to the list just in the last week, which is very exciting. And are spectacular, really recommend heading down there. Natural England make it really clear, these species are of conservation interest as indicators of mycologically rich, unimproved grasslands, a habitat seriously threatened across not only the UK but Europe. It's not just our opinion, it's backed by decades of science. The JNCC further stresses how our international responsibility to protect these globally significant waxcap grasslands. This is international importance, not just national and regional importance. So how many times, important question, how many times did PBO or Stantec mention waxcaps, essential indicator? 0, not a single mention of this crucial factor of biodiverse grassland. As we know, Stantec assessment misclassified vast areas of crucial biodiverse grassland, downgrading the findings, as Glyn and Jess have said. massively downplaying the significance. And they made development seem feasible, which is why we're here right now, still arguing the case. But wax caps show in reality, the reality in technicolor. These fungi take centuries to establish. They only thrive in unfertilized, high-value meadows. It's really alarming that your recent council statement still supports substantive findings, now utterly demolished by experts and the current troops of wax caps. You can't plough up a meadow and replace it with sulfurized land, as has been proposed. To do so would be to defy science, common sense, and actually the law as well, because we've got the Environment Act, NPPF guidelines, SAIM, which really dictate and mandate the mitigation hierarchy needs to be applied, especially for irreplaceable habitats. This crucial step still hasn't been applied several years later, and the current brief that the ecologists have been issued with still presumes development. Doesn't allow you ecologists to start from the beginning, as they should, and ask that crucial question, if, not how, development should take place. So I've got some questions here, some of which will have to go to my minute response, which I'd like to insist on. My first
Thank you, Martin.
question
That's
is,
your 3 minutes. Thank you. Thanks very much.
I'm not having that. We've missed
please,
several minutes. Will you ensure that
These are the rules. No, Martin, I'm going to have to ask you to.
Will I get
got
my
another
right
speaker.
minute?
You will get
right
another
to
minute
reply?
after the officers.
I'll get my minute right to reply.
You get your minute after the officers.
And
have
everyone
replied.
else, as we've been
If they want
assured.
another minute, they will. All,
Okay,
I'm
that's
sure they
fine.
won't
That's
all want
great.
another minute because they've all made their points. But
I'm
if you want
reassured
another
by
minute,
that.
then you
Thank you very
you
much.
and anybody else can have one. But I don't like have your say speakers coming and abusing the rules of our have your say system. It is what it is, and we have to abide by it, or else there'll be anarchy and chaos. Councillor Mike Lilly via Zoom, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for letting me speak. I was going to start abusing my position, but you seem angry, so I won't now. So we've heard from an awful lot of speakers tonight, and there's an awful lot more people out there. I have to say that it's about time now that the committee and officers actually made a proper decision now on whether to still include Middlewick Granges within the local plan system. The amount of evidence that is piling up, I've never seen in all my years as a councillor when I've been on the planning committee. It's an awful lot, and it should have been thrown out some time ago. The MOD, can they really be trusted in what they do? We've heard that there's a report that should have been submitted to the council many years back before we all were told about the plans for building on the Wick. What happened to that report? I did ask a full council the other week for them to look into it, and can we see that, please? Why wasn't it submitted into the council? Was it because it showed how much wildlife and grass was on the Middlewick Ranges? We've seen how the MOD have suddenly started to ramp up their bad behaviour in the summer with people attacking one of the ecologists over the Wick, and the police were called. No action was taken, which is pretty poor performance by the police then. In the last couple of weeks, we've seen them installing barbed wire fencing around the Wick. Why on earth are they doing that? There's no firing on the ranges anymore. People walk there. Barbed wire is if they get caught up on it, there's no need for it. So I say to you now, committee, you have the power, and it's about time that public voice is heard. There is an alternative to Middlewick Granges, and that is the West Tay land over there. It'll be perfect to build on. It wasn't done before, but perhaps it was proper because it was a garden community. But it could quite easily sustain 1,000 to 2,000 homes. So let's let's protect the wildlife and the trees and improve our air quality, which we should be doing anywhere, and build these houses over at West Tay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lilly. What I will do, I'll ask the officers in their response, because Councillor Lee raised the point there, it's time for Middlewick to be withdrawn. I want you to address that situation, the powers that this committee has and whose decision it is when the local plan is reviewed, what the decision-making protocol is in this council and in fact in every local authority in the country, and what powers the local plan committee has. So if officers could address that crucial point, because I think there is some misunderstanding around that from, quite rightly, not only from members of the public, but from councillors as well. Our final Have Your Say speaker is Councillor Lee Scordis.
Thank you, Chair. And similar to the thoughts of the other speakers, my feeling is Middlewick needs to be top of the agenda here for future meetings. And at the earliest point we can in this review, we need to look at this site urgently and look at the removal of this site, to be very candid. As you say, we need to work out the process, but what I think we need to be clear is, you panel members, you have the say of the direction this committee goes in. Have the utmost respect for our officers, who have one of the hardest jobs on the council, and everyone should respect the hard job they have. But committee members, it's you who decide which direction this goes in. And I'm very unaware of any councillors now who agree with building on Middlewick Ranges with all the evidence that's come forth. The biggest concerns I have is that we are seeing with this evidence that's been gathered, and thank you to all the volunteers who spent hours and hours going through all this evidence, FOI requests, those who've been standing in midnight searching for bats and other sort of species. That this site is just not going to be viable for building. No developer is touching it. It's been up for sale for almost a decade and no one has bought this land. What that means is, firstly, we might not reach our housing targets, which puts the local plan at threat. Secondly, we are in a housing crisis. I want good homes for local people. We are not going to get that when sites like this are included in there, and frankly, they're not going to be able to be built on. But thirdly, we know that this site is it's such an important space for our area in Old Heath and Monkwick, for some of the most deprived communities we represent in Colchester. They have little else, and you have this fantastic space that most towns and cities do not have. So it's far too important to look at building. And I do agree with my colleagues. I think we have to look at the site in West Tay again, where these studies have been done, where we have evidence from the past, and where I believe the infrastructure is more suitable, and you're not destroying land as valuable as Middlewick Ranges, because we do need homes. We all have to admit that, and we need to meet those housing targets to have a viable local plan. We know how important it is to have a local plan. It's disappointing that we weren't given this evidence initially when this was put before councillors in 2021. We didn't have the evidence we needed, I think, to make that sound judgment. That's why many of us abstained on the issue. We just were not happy that it was sound, and we think we've been proven right here. So really, it's up to you, committee, whether you want to look at this as a big piece of work, but I think the crowds outside and the fact that this white elephant is just going to get bigger and bigger as we go into the future. And as I say, we need to deliver those homes. They're not going to be delivered on Middlewick. Let's look at other sites that are much more viable to build these homes and protect vital areas like Middlewick to meet the aims and objectives of the council.
Thank you, Councillor Scordis. Are you going to lead, Sandra, on the response?
I think Karen's going to address the decision-making point. Perhaps do that
Yeah,
first.
that'd probably be best to do that first. Karen, please, and then Sandra will deal with some of the details that we've had from our speakers. Karen.
Yeah, thank you, and please note my apologies for being late. We are the decision-making authority in the early stages of the local plan process, and sorry if I sound like a broken record, but we cannot remove any one site from a local plan in isolation. It has to take place as part of a review of the whole local plan. That is now underway and has been for some time, but it does revolve around an awful lot of evidence, ecology being one of the key pieces. The sooner officers can get on and do that work, review the evidence base, some of which we're doing in-house, some which consultants are doing, where there's specialist advice required, the sooner we can publish the draft plan. But the more distractions the team have, the slower that process is. And I don't want to hold that up for more than one reason. It is a tight timescale, as I said. What we're hoping to do is publish the draft plan in January, which will be considered by this committee in February. The committee will then be asked to vote on whether the preferred options, the draft plan, should be published for consultation, and that will take 6 weeks. Once the consultation responses are received, the local plan will be reviewed in light of the responses. Updated evidence will be commissioned if need be, and a final draft of the plan will be published. Again, it will come to this committee to agree the consultation and to submit it to the planning inspectorate. A planning inspector will decide whether the plan is sound and whether it should proceed and come back to this council for adoption. The adoption of a local plan takes place at a full council meeting, not this committee. Is that clear?
Thank you, that's clarified the matter very well. Thank you, Karen, that's very concise and clear. Sandra.
Okay, thank you. I'll try and pick up all the points that were raised under sort of collective headings, because there was some common themes in what all of the speakers said. So firstly, looking at in relation to the evidence that has been the credibility of the evidence that underpins the adopted local plan. I think the concerns and criticism about this evidence are well documented and understood. There is no value in to anyone or the planning process or the plan making process in revisiting this. The evidence that was available at the time of the local plan examination for the current local plan, including all of that was submitted from various bodies and third parties, was considered at that time at the local plan examination by the planning inspector, and at that time the plan was found sound. Due to the nature of ecological information, any future considerations for the site will require new evidence in any event, both in respect of any potential future planning application or as part of consideration for the local plan review. So going over the failings of previous evidence when is not going to achieve anything constructive. So then just on the points made about the value, the ecological value and the importance of the what's known about the site. We all know there is no shortage of evidence in relation to the ecological value of the site, and this will be considered fully by all parties with the relevant expert advice as part of the ongoing considerations to inform decisions going forward. So just in relation to the future local plan, just sort of building on the process and procedures that Karen explained, the local plan review will reconsider the site allocation at Middlewick in the context of all the evidence available to inform the plan as a whole, and there's a number of alternative site locations that have been suggested by those speaking this evening, and that will all be in the mix of the consideration as a whole with all the evidence in the way in which the plan needs to balance all of the constraints, all the evidence, and the need to meet the housing requirement that we are faced with doing. That is the plan making process, and this will form part of that. And then just to comment on the comments about the evidence that's being undertaken on behalf of the council, the independent ecological evidence, which is currently underway. The council's independent ecological surveys are to provide a genuinely independent account of the site in respect of the botanical invertebrate species and habitats, which will help inform future planning considerations for the site. And has previously been stated that Natural England recommended that we commission these particular botanical and invertebrate surveys. They were initially commissioned to inform master planning for the site and not specifically as part of the evidence base for the local plan, although time has moved on and those studies will help inform the local plan. But that's important to note that that was the initial driver for the context of the evidence, but there's no question that it will be useful to help inform what's being considered. And all the findings that various ecologists have made available to us and other parties have been shared with the council's ecologists. And I think that covers most of the points that were raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Nobody else wants to make any other points? No, good. Can I see of the Have You Say speakers who wants to take advantage of their extra minute? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you. Okay, I'll call you in order. Councillor Harris. I will be strict on this. You've got 1 more minute.
I'll only take a few seconds, Chair. Just to tease out further, just so my understanding of the review process roadmap, from what I understood, with the consultation and the timelines you're talking about, it'll be spring, summer next year when the end of that process is finished, where the planning inspector gets the document. Is that right?
Just want to cover that quickly, Karen.
No, it'll be later on. We're not looking to submit the plan until the autumn of next year.
Jeremy, did you want an extra minute? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, just to respond to Councillor Officer Syra, evidence is not a distraction. Putting evidence is not a distraction. Second point is evidence being understood? I think if evidence was truly understood from, it would be, the reason it's going over and over, which is what Sandra was saying, was is that we're still not convinced that the evidence is being seen for what it is. The driver for the independent review, as has just been said, was to revise the master plan. There needs to be no master plan for housing. It's got to be dismissed. The plan was based on a false premise, as I said in my evidence. That is absolutely crucial. It doesn't matter what the inspector decided. The basis of the evidence was flawed. We know from the maps and what we've said about the difference between the PBA report and the Stantick report, that was not real. The map in the Stantick report did not represent reality. And that's a really fundamental flaw. Thank you,
Thank you, Jeremy. Glyn, did you want your extra minute? Okay, thank you.
I think we understand the timescale for the review of the plan is fixed. But what we're seeing is the MOD are now acting with impunity, putting in things more or less in contemplation of a sale for development. Surely there must be some sort of communication with the MOD to say, based on the evidence we already have, you are not going to get planning permission for this. Yes, of course, make your decision when you will make your decision, but surely give the MOD an indication that they are wasting time and they are destroying habitat that needs not be destroyed. Please take some responsibility.
Martin Pugh, please. Microphone.
Thank you. So in a previous response, Andrea Luxford-Vaughan, portfolio holder, said ask a certain question, get a certain answer. And we're still there, aren't we? We're still at that point where you've asked a leading question and an ecologist with good intentions has gone in on a specific brief which doesn't include starting at the top of the mitigation hierarchy. They've been drafted in to look at invertebrates and plants only. Do their specialisms include barbicel bats and nightingales and waxcap fungi? We've been out there the last week. We haven't seen your ecologists looking for waxcap fungi, crucial indicator. Is that part of their brief? Very limited brief. We know the systems that got into this mess, they still prevail. There is no independent ecologist. There's no independent brief by definition. So my final question really, bearing in mind we've got an urgent timescale, this is urgent, we can't afford to wait to March. Will the option for a local plan without Middlewick be presented? And will the councillors be allowed to vote on that option?
Thank you. I think Karen might have answered that earlier, but might ask you to reiterate the point on that. Did Councillor Lilly want to come back? He's gone, so probably not then. Councillor Scordis, you have your extra minute.
Oh, thanks, Chair. I agree with the comments made on evidence. They're no distraction. They're important for you as panel members to do your job. And that lack of evidence is why we're here now. We didn't have that with the initial local plan on Middlewick, which was put in too late by the MOD. From what I understood of the process, and I may have got it wrong as well, so the panel will review the local plan. They could decide take out certain sites, could be Middlewick, could be this, and suggest moving things about. It may be one site decides landlord doesn't want to sell, so that doesn't mean housing supply, and then that goes before local plan to vote on, if I'm right. So it could, the local plan itself could change dramatically or just slightly, and then go before full council. Just clarifying that.
Thanks, thanks, Lee. I'll ask Karen again to explain the process, because there have been a couple of questions there again, and get it clear in the committee's mind and the public's mind. What is the responsibility of this committee and what is the responsibility of full council? I did think you outlined it pretty well, but obviously I think just for my own benefit and for the benefit of other people who try to reiterate the point, if you could just go through it once again.
Yeah.
Thanks.
This committee is responsible for agreeing the content of the draft plan, the preferred option plan, and also the final version of the plan, which is submitted to the Planning Inspectorate. The submission is also agreed by this committee. Adoption is by full council. I can see some nods, so I'm hoping everyone follows that.
Thank you. That's understood.
And can I, you know, in response to a couple of the other points,
absolutely.
I certainly don't want to preempt what the local plan will say in January, because there's far too much outstanding evidence at the moment. And I'm not saying, I don't think I said, and I'll check the recording, but evidence was a distraction. Far from it. Evidence is what we need to get on and do and understand. It's other things which are preventing us from doing the day job. Thank you.
Anybody wish to add anything? Mr. Pugh had some specific questions. I see he's just left about what the ecologist's report will cover. Does anybody want to say, will it will cover waxcap fungi and nightingales as well as invertebrates?
I think it will cover anything that comes under the Botanical Invertebrate Survey, and they'll be recording what they see at the time when they do the surveys. And when we get the reports, we can't preempt what they will or won't say and what they'll cover and what they'll not cover. But, you know, as to whether there'll be any record of any wax fungi, I'm not sure. Sorry.
And can you remind us of the... No, you can't. I'm sorry. Have your say. No, I'm sorry, you can't. Sandra, can you give us the timescale of that ecological report, Stu, please?
I can, yeah. We're expecting an interim report by the end of this year, and we are agreeing with the ecologist the way in which that information will be shared and explained with the opportunity for sort of understanding exactly, you know, what it means and to help interpret some of the findings. But but once we have it, and it will be interim with very clear indication of what's still to come, and the main reason for there being a need for it not being able to be completely finalised is because of the appalling weather we had in the spring this year, which prevented some of the survey work to be carried out that was planned and had to be aborted due to bad weather. So we'll keep everybody well informed at the time when we're ready to publish the information that we have when we have it.
Thank you, Sandra. That concludes the Have Your Say section. What I want to say, and I want to back up what Councillor Scourdis said, is that they have a difficult job, but we have some outstanding and exceptional officers dealing with the local plan committee and planning in this authority. We're very proud of them. We have utter confidence in them, and we rely on them for their advice and guidance, and they will do the best job in getting what's best for Colchester through this local plan process. I'm moving on to item 7, which is the Pennsylvania Lane Article 4 direction. We've got no speakers on this, so I'm going to invite Simon to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Committee. This report, in essence, has two halves to it. One is a retrospective explanation of how we have reached the place where we are now, namely that we have served an Article 4 direction on a parcel of agricultural land in Tiptree, and secondly, to explain and seek agreement to formally confirm that order such that it will remain extant in perpetuity until it is withdrawn. The background to this Article 4 is that we received enforcement complaints about various activities taking place on a parcel of agricultural land, which in effect was parcelling up the parcel into subplots, the creation of various vehicular access points, fencing off individual points, and the marketing of that land on the open market for purposes that clearly were not intended to be agricultural. In the interest of the better planning of the area, the decision was taken at officer level to seek agreement to serve an Article 4 direction, and the process followed was an urgent decision process involving the meeting's procedure roles under the Constitution and consultation with the proper officer of the council. In addition, consultation was undertaken with chair and group spokes of this committee, and we received unanimous support for the making of a direction to prevent the erection of further fences, further vehicular access points, the use of the land for temporary uses including holding of markets, etc., and the use of the land for camping purposes and the stationing of caravans. Notice was served on the site because we don't know who the owners are, and that order was duly made on the 23rd of August of this year. We then had to await the first available local plan committee, which is this evening, to seek members' agreement to formally confirm that order for the direction as currently made. And here we are, Chairman, seeking the support of the committee to go ahead and confirm the order and in effect take away those permitted development rights, the effect of which is not to prevent those uses but simply to require the submission of a formal planning application for consideration by the council. So it does not totally deprive landowners of those rights, it simply requires that planning permission be sought. So you have a report before you, Chair, which seeks support of the committee to formally confirm the order as set out in the appendix. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. Are there any speakers on this item? Councillor Smithson. I thought you might want to, being the ward councillor. Reese.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Simon. Microphone. Excuse me. So thank you very much for taking this action. I actually had a couple of questions about Article 4 directions generally. This is my first time coming across them. Can they be withdrawn by the council in the event that they're deemed unnecessary, and are there any financial implications for us to do so? And how long do they remain in force for? Do we have to reapply after a certain period of time, etc.? And then as a more wider policy point, I see that obviously we dealt with this under an emergency protocol. Is there any way that that authority can be delegated down to the planning department heads of, or does it always need to come back to this committee? Thank you.
All very good questions. Anybody else want to contribute on this before I ask Simon? Yes, Councillor Kirkby-Taylor.
I was just going to ask for confirmation, but we definitely don't know who the owner of this land is, and that all land searches have been returned as well, presumably inconclusive.
Thank you. Anyone? Any other points to raise? No. Simon, if you come back on those points, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Responding to first questions, the permitted development rights were withdrawn and they are withdrawn in perpetuity. There is no specific timescale for review, but if it is seen as unnecessary, it can be withdrawn, but it has to be unmade via the same process. The Constitution sets out the process, which at present does not delegate Article 4 directions to the head of service. That could be something which this committee could consider if it considered appropriate. However, I would say they are quite rare. We don't have that many of them, and consequently, when they are made, given that they do place additional administrative burdens on the landowner, they are seen as being something which it is good to have democratic involvement in that process, and particularly involvement of ward councillors in making the decision to confirm the order. In terms of the matters raised regarding ownership, the land holding has been fragmented and those parcels are owned by who knows whom. They aren't registered title, so we can't actually ascertain who owns those individual parcels. However, what we did do, we served notice on the land itself, so that is plain for all to see. And notice was also served on the agent marketing the land, so it would have got back directly to the landowner. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Anybody want to ask any more questions? I thought they were fairly clear answers. I'm reminded by the Democratic Services Officer, if we were going to change the way it was done, it would have to go to full council from following a recommendation from this committee, because it would be a change to the Constitution. Okay, then I'll move to the recommendation, which is that the committee notes the reasons behind the making of an Article 4 direction concerning land at Pennsylvania Lane, Tiptree, and that the committee support the formal confirmation of the Article 4 direction with the requisite 6-month period. Can I see all those in favour? Unanimous. Yeah. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 8. We say we get them rarely, and the two come along at once. Simon, again, on the resurface of Colchester Conservation Area number 4, North Station Road and environs, please.
Thank you, Chair. Irini is going to be briefing on this one. Thank you.
It's different to what it says on my sheet, but Irini, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, committee. So this item relates to the two Article 4 directions that were made for Colchester Conservation Area 4, North Station Road and environs. The good directions were served and came into effect in April 2024, and according to the formal procedures for making an Article 4 direction, there is a 4-week consultation period during which the public can provide comment, and after that period the Council needs to confirm the Article 4 direction so it remains in effect, effective. Unfortunately, the previous local plan committee meeting was in June, which was shortly after the consultation period expired, and then there weren't any meetings in August, September, and October. So, unfortunately, technically, it wasn't possible to confirm the direction within the 6-month period that's required, and now the directions have technically have lapsed. Permission or approval is sought so we can serve again the directions so they remain effective. And also approval is also sought so the delegated powers to the planning head of service to confirm the directions without bringing them back to committee. If there are not any objections during the consultation period. During the first consultation period back in April, there were not any objections or comments from the public, so we anticipate there are not going to be any objections this time either. But if in the event that there are any objections, then we will bring it back to committee. Otherwise, we seek delegated powers to confirm it within the 6 months to avoid a potential issue again. Thank you.
Thank you, Irini. Yeah, you weren't just getting a feeling of deja vu. We have seen this before, and we did issue it before. Simon, do you want to explain why it's come back? And I think Irini did explain a bit, but it might be helpful for you to explain to the committee why it is back before us.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have a prescribed period during which time we have to confirm the order following the advertisement of the order and the making, which really starts the clock ticking with regard to the making of the order. In this instance, sadly, that was not carried through. I think there was a general lack of awareness around the urgent decision process in the absence of this committee, for which I can only apologise. The meeting's procedure rules are indeed labyrinthine and obscure, and going forward this will be engraved on our hearts that this process does in fact exist, not to bypass the committee, but simply to enable us to complete the process and then report back to you, as indeed we have done on the first report, Chair. But so thank you all, and apologies that we are having this further step.
No, I just wanted you to explain to the committee why it was here again. And, we cancelled some meetings, so we rearranged some meetings, and that didn't help. This just got lost in the system. Any questions on this report? So we want to do it again. So let's go to the recommendation. The committee is asked to instruct the head of service to reserve the Article 4 directions as soon as possible and delegate to the planning head of service powers to consider any representation received in response and, as appropriate, to confirm the directions within the requisite statutory timescale. In the event that a large volume of adverse responses are received raising substantive new issues, then the head of service will refer the confirmation back for the committee's further consideration. Can I see all those in favour, please show?
Unanimous.
We're unanimous again. Thank you very much. We'll go on to item 9, which is the local development scheme. Again, no speakers. I'm going to invite Laura to present this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members may recall that we regularly review and update the local development scheme, known as the LDS, most recently in June this year. The LDS sets out the timetable for the local development documents that this council will produce to guide development in Colchester. This includes details of member approval dates, future consultation periods, and expected dates of adoption and publication. The government recently consulted on changes to the National Planning Policy Framework, the NPPF, which among many proposals included changes to the standard methodology for calculating housing need, reintroduction of the 5-year housing land supply, and changes to the plan making system. Local authorities now have until December 2026 to submit a local plan under the current plan making system. As a result, the timetable for the Colchester local plan review has been revised to allow time to address the implications of any revisions to the NPPF whilst ensuring that the council has an up-to-date local plan. The timetable allows for the plan to be at an advanced stage in its preparations at the time the current plan will become 5 years old. The preferred options consultation is now scheduled for February-March 2025, with the submission consultation in August-September 2025 and submission to the Planning Inspectorate in October 2025. The committee are asked to agree these updates to the local development scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Any questions to Laura? Yes, Councillor Smithson.
Thank you, Chair. It's not so much a question as a typo point of clarification. On page 55, under the local plan review timeline, you've got your preferred options consultation at bullet 3, starting in February 25 and ending in March 24.
We will correct that. Well spotted, Reese. Well spotted. Any other points anybody wishes to make? Yes, Councillor Ellis.
Just coming back to something that Karen was explaining earlier, timetable-wise, just so that I understand the last possible moment this committee has an input to say yes or no to a plan. And when is it in this timetable? Because when you were explaining it when everyone else was here, and I didn't want to raise it then because I didn't want to set hairs running again, you said that we had an opportunity to vote on it in the autumn, which I think is the Regulation 19 part, and I'm not sure. I just want to make sure that's correct, because that was, I think, one of the issues that we had last time when we thought we would have another opportunity to vote, and we were told no, it was then the inspector's consultation, and it would then be going to the inspector, and there was nothing that we could do about it. So I just want to know, when is the last moment that this committee has an option to influence the plan itself before it goes to examination?
Karen?
Before examination, did you say? Just to be clear.
The last moment that we can influence it before it goes to examination
Is scheduled for July, August next year.
Okay, thank you. Any other points or questions on this report? No, good. We'll move to the recommendation that we agree the change to the LDS. All those in favour?
Unanimous.
Unanimous again. Thank you very much. Item 10, Colchester Local Plan Issues and Options Report. Again, I think the Have Your Say speakers probably had their say earlier. Shelley, over to you to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. The committee has received update reports on progress with the new local plan at each meeting, including updates on the themed issues and options engagements. The approach to issues and options has been to carry out themed engagements rather than the traditional single issues and options consultation document. The Local Plan Committee has agreed each of the engagements and have been updated on the comments received on an ongoing basis. Details of all issues and options engagements and the comments received have been collated into a single report, which is appended to this committee report. The first themed engagement was Green Network and Waterways. This engagement helped lead to the development of guiding principles, which establishes the green infrastructure framework across the council. Alongside the Green Network engagement was a call for sites. A total of 197 submissions were received as part of the call for sites, which is an opportunity to promote sites for development across the city. A full list of submitted sites was reported to Local Plan Committee in February, and details of all sites are set out in a report on the Council's website. They're best viewed via the interactive map on our website. No off-site biodiversity net gain or BNG sites were submitted as part of our initial call for sites, and so we launched an off-site BNG call for sites in June. 9 off-site BNG sites were submitted. The vision engagement asked questions about what people like best about Colchester. What are the opportunities looking ahead to 2041? And what would people like Colchester to be known for? Themes emerged from this engagement, which will form the basis of the local plan vision. Essex County Council's recommended net zero carbon homes and buildings and embodied carbon policies were published for engagement in April. And question, Are these policies suitable and appropriate to include in the local plan? 42 comments were received to this engagement with mixed responses. A placemaking questionnaire was published on the Council's website to capture ideas and thoughts on the pattern, scale, character and design quality of places. There was a community placemaking questionnaire, a planning and development industry questionnaire. The placemaking engagement took place from the 13th of June to the 25th of July. An engagement based on the same themes was also carried out at a residents' panel meeting. The questionnaires included a wide variety of questions. Some of the common themes and issues that were raised throughout were the importance of green spaces, accessibility and connectivity is key to promoting sustainable and active travel, public transport is poor in terms of connections, timetable and pricing, Colchester's become a city where you need to drive, there's a need for energy efficient, sustainable homes, there's been overdevelopment with a lack of infrastructure, recent developments have been poor quality with too many flats, heritage is not respected or enhanced, and comments about the importance of safety and security. There were 24 respondents to the community placemaking questionnaire and 13 respondents to the industry questionnaire. A detailed summary of the responses to the questionnaires is included in the collated issues and options report. Some word clouds are included in the committee report to provide a high-level summary of responses. Health and well-being crosses many aspects of planning and is intertwined with the other issues and options themes. There were some questions on health and well-being in the placemaking questionnaire, but the primary focus for engagement on the health and well-being theme has been through the North East Essex Health and Wellbeing Alliance via a health and planning subgroup. The main focus of the health and planning subgroup is to help inform the opportunities for the local plan to influence health and wellbeing through placemaking. Considerations in respect of infrastructure will be informed by other evidence, including the infrastructure delivery plan. Workshops have taken place with the subgroup, and a summary of these workshops is included in the committee report and the issues and options report. Workshops have had input from the Town and Country Planning Association. Finally, the issues and options report includes a summary of comments received prior to the commencement of the issues and options engagements and comments made outside of any of the engagement processes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shelley. Questions, comments? Yes, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Two unrelated questions. The first one is more of a clarification. You mentioned, I think you call it off-site B&G. Could you just confirm if that's where a developer is able to buy their B&G somewhere that isn't here, and it could be anywhere? That's question one. And question two, on the survey that you did, could you elaborate on how it was promoted and how many respondents you got through that survey and sort of what the sampling methodology was that you used, if there was anything of significance?
Yes. So
Shelley?
So the off-site B&G. So biodiversity net gain, B&G, it's a mandatory requirement. It can be delivered on site. So an applicant can put in a planning application and demonstrate that they're meeting their minimum of 10% increase in B&G on the site. In some cases, it can't be achieved on site, and there's an option to purchase units on other sites, ideally within Colchester, the Colchester district. So the B&G consultation was to ask landowners if they had sites to submit for off-site B&G. So some people call them habitat banks. And your question about the survey, was that about the B&G consultation?
It was more the general one you said was on the council website. I just want to know how people were told about it. How did they know it was there?
So all of our engagements were hosted, well, they were promoted on the council's website. We've got an online consultation system called JDI, and they've all been, we've asked people to respond on the online consultation system. There's links in the issues and options collated report and in the committee report and on our website to our online consultation system. So people can go in and have a look at all of the engagements that we've run as part of issues and options and see full details of all comments that have been received. I appreciate this report is a summary of those comments, and some of them are lengthy, especially comments to the placemaking questionnaire, which is lengthy. We do have an engagement and consultation strategy which this committee approved before we started the issues and options engagements, and that's on our website and just explains how we consult people. So it's mainly notifying consultees on our database, releasing a press release, forms for our vision engagement. We had a video to try and encourage people to get involved and give us their comments.
Okay, Councillor Kelly with that. Okay, Councillor Small, please.
Yeah, I've got, having looked at the report that's going to go out on the website, I've got concerns about the section early thoughts for the Colchester local plan review. That's on page 82. Middlewick is given just over one line, which doesn't seem reflective of the feeling on this issue, particularly after this evening. So you've got Colchester Cycle Campaign have got about a page, and I'm fully supportive of them. I don't want other people to have less. Sir Bob Russell, Welshwood Park residents, and the British Horse Society have all got a decent paragraph each, and Middlewick isn't even 2 lines. And I don't think that reflects the feeling. Now, whether that is to do, and I don't think it's because you had less engagement. In the ideas for new green spaces, you had 39 respondents regarding Middlewick. The other areas, you had sort of 1 or 2 respondents. So, yeah, you had a sort of mass of people responding about that. Page 45, about the net zero, we had 23 respondents on Middlewick, which again, that isn't reflected in other sites. So I'm just, yeah, I'm supportive of the report on the whole, but I just don't know if it is reflective of the strength of feeling of Middlewick. And I know there's different ways of gathering information, and it might be that Save Middlewick people didn't engage in the way that they were supposed to. But, you know, this subject, it's been in the national press. There's an art exhibition in the middle of town. There's been multiple protests, multiple have your says at various council meetings. So we do know the feeling is strong, and I'd like to see that maybe a bit more reflected.
Thank you, Faye. Shelley?
Yes, as you mentioned, throughout the report in responses to other engagements, there is reference to Middlewick. So campaigners for Middlewick have got involved in our various engagements, and that's noted in the report. I think this section here, the early thoughts, the people or organisations that have mentioned here have, I believe, and my colleagues might want to add to this, but sent in emails and letters outside or in advance of the issues and options, asking us to consider these issues. They've been summarised and included in here.
Does anybody want to add to that? No, Karen?
I'm happy to. I don't know that I'll have the answer, but I'm happy to speculate on the answer. There's 25 mentions of Middlewick in the report, and I think what's happened is people have engaged through the formal processes rather than submitting ad hoc comments. So they've used the appropriate channels, really, and that's why it's reflected, as you mentioned, Faye, in some of the earlier sections of the report. So I'm happy that it's adequately covered. I can see what you mean about it just being a one-liner at the end, but elsewhere in the report, in the formal sections, then it's adequately addressed, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smalls, and by raising it, it will now appear in the minutes as well, of course. So before I bring Councillor Smithson in, I think it's important, because this is a public document, that on page 138, 6629/11033, L&Q, Consortium Adrian Pritchard. This isn't our former Chief Executive, gamekeeper turned poacher. That's an incorrect name. It should be Gareth Pritchard. So I just wanted to make the record show, because Andrew did raise this at the briefing, and we'll cast no aspersions on our former Chief Executive, but that name should be amended to Gareth Pritchard, not Adrian Pritchard. Councillor Smithson, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So I have some concerns about the scale of the engagement and the level of responses. This is an important document, and I appreciate we can't hold people to gunpoint and force them to fill in surveys, but this is less than 0.1% of our resident base. It's just not representative in any way, shape or form, and people who generally are vocal about subjects are vocal in this as well. So I think my first question is, what are the plans to repeat this exercise, continue the process? Does it have to be a defined period of time? Can we not keep pushing this and use it to inform on an ongoing basis? That's the first question. And the second question relates to a couple of the specific comments. I actually think there is huge value in some of these individual comments, like the ones you can see on page 109 from Rachel Bolsler, around the use of microsites for nature. I really like these as ideas, and subject to ownership issues, I'm wondering if there's anything that actually prevents us from helping people to turn these into nature sites. I'm conscious that we are looking at the asset register at the moment, and I would be really interested to understand how many little pieces of land like this the council owns, and can we do something with those to improve biodiversity, because we're certainly not going to be able to build on them. And as you can see from this comment, that could also help to solve some other problems like illegal parking and things like that. So I'd be interested to hear what we can do there.
Thank you for those points, Rhys. Shelley.
Yes, it's really hard to engage people in the local plan process unless people have a really strong view about a site. It's really, really difficult. And we have tried, and I think this was part of the reason for carrying out these issues and options in a slightly different way. What we've done in the past for issues and options, and what other councils tend to do, is publish one report for 6 weeks, sort of setting out some issues and options and asking people for their views. So we've tried to take that further this time, carry out themed engagements to try and get people interested. Someone might be interested in net zero, someone who might not pick up an issues and options report, for example. But the response rate, as you've said, is low when you consider the size of Colchester. We have tried to do some other things differently this time. We've had workshops with the residents panel as part of the vision engagement and the placemaking engagement. We did contact the sixth form college to try and go in there, and that didn't work out. But it was something that we did to try and reach some younger people and get some views from the younger population. Going forward, this is the issues and options report. Finish the issues and options engagements now. We're considering everything that people have said and the emerging evidence base, and starting to work on the preferred options plan, and that will be the next stage of consultation. As Karen explained earlier, the preferred options plan, or the draft plan, will be brought to this committee in February. and will be subject to a 6-week period of public consultation. In terms of trying to get the public to engage with that, there'll be a press release. We will notify all the consultees on our database. We're talking to the comms team. I think we've booked a banner on the council's webpage, so if someone goes onto the council's website, it won't just be people that search for planning, they'll see it on the front page. And then the comment about microsites and nature. So yes, this comment from about the Crouch Street City Centre and that micro space there, that was part of the Green Network and Waterways engagement, and that was a joint project that we did with the Parks and Open Spaces and Sustainability team. So we are sort of talking to other council departments.
Councillor Smith, and you wanted to come back?
Yes, please, Chair, thank you. I think, I don't know if it's too late now, but I think we need to look at the way we do consultation with residents. Don't think issues and options springs to mind. It doesn't attract most people. It doesn't mean anything to most people. I think there's that aspect to it. Are we using any external support to help us to promote this survey, to go out to the market and say, what is the best way to consult on something like this? Because we live in a world where someone can pose a question on Twitter and get 20 million views in less than 12 hours, and somehow in 6 weeks we can't get more than 60 residents to come back to us. It just feels to me that we're collectively not trying hard enough to engage, and I think we need to change the way we present, make it more accessible, make the language friendlier, so that we do everything we absolutely can. And if we still don't get any more responses, then I'll be happy that we've tried. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Karen to come in, who regularly gets millions of followers on her social medias. Karen.
Got so many fans. But when the next version of the plan is published, I can assure you there will be a lot more interest, because, as Shelley said, that once you start publishing a bit more about specifics, then people are interested. We have tried to engage over the years in many different ways, including some external facilitation, which has worked in some respects and not others. We'll certainly be going out more and holding events that people can come along to. Now, whether that's just people drop by in the town centre, that's one of the best ones that I've ever worked on. To having things in community centres and that. So we are always looking for new ideas. If you've got anyone, do let us know. I spoke to Councillor Gocher last week, before, about trying to get an in to the sixth form college again, because I think they would be really useful to engage with. But like I say, do let us know if there's any other ideas. And in terms of council-owned sites, everything is mapped on the planning map, if you want to see anything. But we've probably got a few too many assets at the moment, haven't we?
Thank you. I've got Councillor Ellis, Councillor Laki-Akinyemi, Councillor Smalls, Councillor Parsons, and then we're going to take a break. If there's no other people who want to come in, we'll finish this item, take a break, and then do item 11 after the break. So, Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chairman. I asked most of my questions and they were answered in the briefing. I just picking up on Rhys's point, which to an extent has been answered, but actually it's really important. The fact that I think he's done the figures, so it's not less than 0.1% of the population of Colchester are interested in how we're developing Colchester. And it's whether people actually understand that having a say at this stage in the process is actually really important. And how do we make people do that? How do we? So we have got to do better. There's got to be some, we're going to have to think about this, because it is just ridiculous that 13 people can respond to something and we're making decisions on how Colchester develops on the basis of what 13 people have decided to submit to an issues and options consultation. It's absolutely ridiculous, actually, when you think about it, isn't it? Schools, getting into schools, we've talked about this before. How do we get into school? We need to get and engage with young people, much, much younger people. This is their future. We're developing these plans for the next, I know it's a 15-year plan, but actually it's continuously being renewed, isn't it? So these are the places that these children are going to be living in when they're adults. They should be part of the planning process. So we need to do much better. Sorry, I'm not meaning to rant, but it is frustrating that we've talked about this before. We talked about the last plan, actually, I think, about getting into education establishments, and we need to do better at it. And it's finding a way to make it fun and engaging. I mean, how you can make it part of a curriculum, I don't know, but it has to be a way. You've got forest schools now where people are doing things outside, which is making children far more environmentally aware. There's got to be a way of engaging them in the planning process. It's not something we can revisit now for this plan, but it's just we do need to do better. And a question I think I'd asked at the briefing was just some of these BNG sites that have come forward. We are going to be consulting with the parishes they're in, just to make, because the one in Cotford already has badger sets and what have you on the site that someone's putting forward for BNG. So I just want to make sure that will be done.
Is that it, Andrew?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you very much. So TikTok videos maybe for the young people. We've got to be. I mean, to add to that, just from me, are we similar to other local authorities in terms of responses, and do we know of any other local authorities who are actually cracked it and getting better and more responses? Who's going to answer that? Sandra, you look poised.
I think it's. I don't know of any good examples at this stage. I think it's a problem in planning. Issues and options is very high level, and it's very hard for to demonstrate why it is important to get engaged at this stage. And the other thing I was going to add is we have tried through schools. We've never really got anywhere with it, but we have just launched a youth residents panel, which I understand met for the first time last week or this week, which wasn't previously available. I know that's again only a small section, but we will, going forward, engage with them as well as the main residents panel, because that's as well as going in through contacts that hopefully we're making some roads with now through, that we can follow on. But I don't think there are any. I think it is a common problem at this stage in planning. I don't think, as Karen said, we'll have this issue the next stage in planning, but we would like people, we'd love to have more input, more positive engagement, but people tend to wait to react to something that they can clearly understand how it affects them, and it's really, really hard, and we really try, and we get as frustrated as everyone else does about the lack of response, and we would, love to have something far more engaging and positive and high level of input and understanding.
And the second question about the site in Cotford, the badger sets.
Yeah, as part of parish council engagement, we are I think we will be going back to consult with parishes, won't we, if they haven't already had that information? Well, not consult with them, but we will engage with them directly on anything that, as part of the next stage of the settlement evidence, then any proposals that have come forward through looking at future opportunities, I think will be covered in part of that stage of that settlements evidence, which is in the next report actually, but I get it's relevant to this report.
And of course, if all councillors are aware of that, you can always feed it in yourself. Yeah. Elizabeth, Councillor Lakiak-Anyemi, please.
I just want to say that it sounds like the feedbacks, the responses that were collected were mainly done digitally. And it sounds like we're not thinking about those who are not on the computer, those who will not go to the Colchester City Council's website to look for these things. How do we make sure they're not disadvantaged, that they can have their say? And just a suggestion for the future, grassroots organizations could be a good way to connect, to find people, to get them to respond, and also the language that are used in terms of, are they relatable to people? Can they, it probably needs us looking at what the language looks like for an everyday man and woman in terms of this service.
Good question. Digitally excluded and the other communities that Elizabeth just referred to?
Yes, I take that point. It was the issues and options engagements were held online. We do have some people on our consultation database who don't have an email address. So for those people, we did post a letter informing them of the engagements. But going forward with the next stage of consultation on the draft plan, we will be doing more in person as well as having the draft plan online. We will, what we've always done in the past is gone out to village halls to give people a chance to come and see us, and sent parish councils and ward members details of where we're being when, so they can help inform communities.
And non-parished areas as well, like our ward, the go-to out to Greenstead and places like that. Karen?
Thanks, yeah, I was just going to add to that really. Do let us know. I know some parish councils, some councillors have newsletters that go out. Yeah, if we know about them in advance and we can provide you with information, then you could put something in those which might help. We did have a young person's event where it's just come back to me, where we offered free pizzas and we still didn't get people turn up. So, you know, even trying to bribe people. My final point was obviously the consultation events we hold in person, very dependent on the resources available. So if any of you would like to volunteer to assist at any of the events, it's an eye-opener. But do feel free to put your names forward. Certainly, councillors have been involved in the past. I can remember some, particularly Nigel Chapman and Chris Arnold have been very involved in the past in the rural north consultations. So you'd be very welcome.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Smalls, Councillor Parsons and Councillor Smithson, and hopefully nobody else, because we do need to take a break.
Yeah, just going back to the youth, and it's just a suggestion, and you might have already done this, but youth clubs, and that's particularly on my mind at the moment, because in the Hive we started a youth club, well, it started 2 weeks ago, but we could not have done that without the excellent support of the Essex Youth Service, and just watching how they engage with the youngsters and get ideas about, or what rules do we want at the youth club, how do we want it. And I was thinking of, like, if you know, you had help from them or help from us as councillors, and just basically modelling what they do. And so, I mean, in Old Heath, the Hive and Rowhedge, we've got a youth club in the Hive, we've got a youth club in Rowhedge, and, you know, we might be surprised, you know, if it's sort of set up as an activity, not something that young people are forced to do, but even if it's like filling in post-it while they're at youth club, filling in post-it notes, writing on a whiteboard, as opposed to they've got to go to a specific event. It's just an idea.
Thank you. Taken on board. Councillor Parsons.
Thank you. Two quick questions. The first is, going back to first principles, when we're doing this engagement consultation, whatever we call it, at the very early stage, asking people what ideas they want, the word clouds and so forth, is the primary purpose to find out what people in Colchester think, or is it to kind of catch people and get them engaged? Because if the primary purpose is to find out what people actually think, from a research methodology perspective, that should be a stratified sample. If we just invite people to select themselves, we are wide open to every lobby group in the town saying, you know, let's get all our members to take part, but we get a very skewed representation. That's the first one.
No, can you ask both points and then because I want to wrap it up quickly because we do need to take a break.
Yes, of course. The second one, on the biodiversity net gain, do we actually have a baseline for each area? I mean, for example, I've got data that I've been given that on Mersey Island there's 134 species of birds that have been seen, and quite a number, I understand, are what's called red rated. Do we have that kind of data as a baseline? Because if we don't, how do we do biodiversity net gain?
Thank you, Martin. Shelley and then Simon wants to come in.
So the first question about issues and options it's not about a sample, it is opening it up to the public, but also stakeholders in Colchester to ask to really drill in and understand what the issues are and to start thinking about options for the plan. So whilst it is important to involve the public, and we've tried to do that, it is also about reaching stakeholders, statutory and general consultees. So I said we have a consultation database and we email everyone on the database to inform them of these engagements. So as well as the public and local groups that we have on that database, it's also statutory consultees, people, organisations like Natural England, the Environment Agency, Highways. So it's reaching a lot of people. The second point about BNG is it's looked at on a site level rather than looking at the whole of the Colchester district. So there isn't a baseline. The baseline would be calculated for a site. So what happens is an applicant who wants to apply for planning permission, they need to get a qualified ecologist to assess and establish the baseline within that site. That then gets a score, and also it's based on habitats rather than species.
Thank you, Shelley. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I won't keep you because I appreciate everyone needs a break. Just really a positive message around reaching hard-to-reach groups. As part of the City Centre Master Plan, we had a number of meetings, including the Sixth Form College and youth groups via the Mercury, and we had some amazing feedback, but it was verbal. We could not get those groups to engage via the digital portal, but they came up with great verbal inputs. We also engaged with dementia groups, and similarly we had really good feedback from those groups as well, but it was all verbal and we had to capture that. But they would not engage via the digital portal, so I don't know what lesson we take away with that.
Thank you. Reece, Councillor Smithson, the last contribution, please.
No question, Chair. If I may, I've found a load of examples of engagement where people are routinely getting 3,000-4,000 contributions. If it's okay, I'll share that.
Local authorities?
Yes,
Okay.
share those examples with Rob, and then he can forward it around to everybody.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you very much. I'm sure we'd be... Okay. We need to look at the recommendation, which I think is to note the collated issues not report and agree to publish it on the council's local plan web pages. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. We'll take a short break of 10 minutes, please. Thank you. I think we're all back in the building, are we? And Owen, are we back on? Yes, I'm getting the thumbs up from Owen. Right, I think we're on to item 11, unless I'm completely mistaken, which is the Colchester Local Plan Review, which is a fairly short and concise report, over hundreds of pages. Sandra, over to you.
Okay, thank you. I'll try and keep hundreds of pages fairly brief in my presentation. This report provides a general overview of the progress made since June 2024 on the evidence base to support the local plan review. It also summarises a number of evidence documents in advance of their publication following this meeting. The table in paragraph 5.4 of the report sets out a summary of the key evidence being prepared with an indication of the timing and progress of each one. There are 3 evidence documents appended to this report for information and will be published as soon as possible after the meeting. These are the settlements evidence stage 1, strategic land availability desktop review, and green and blue infrastructure guiding principles. The settlements evidence goes through each settlement and provides an individual profile of the existing character and infrastructure provision, as well as high-level constraints and opportunities. The town and parish councils have been invited to feed into these, and in many cases the information reflects updates provided by them. We've made every effort to ensure the information is correct, but if there are any inaccuracies, we would be pleased to be notified and amendments can be made prior to publication. It's been suggested to add a section since finalising this report, to each of the settlements where it's relevant to reflect on the current local plan and permissions granted to provide an accurate position of the committed changes which are underway or in the pipeline, where it applies to each settlement. And it's agreed that this would be useful and this will be added before it's published. Stage 2 of the evidence will start to look at the opportunities for proposed changes and reflect on how they inform the review of the local plan. The desktop review is part of the strategic land availability assessment and is part of the required methodology agreed by this committee to ensure the council have proactively looked to identify any additional potential sites and potential locations for growth or green uses or other uses to ensure the approach to land allocation is comprehensive. Paragraph 5.11 of the report indicates the sources of data this review has drawn on, and the sites included are set out in the desktop review report, are appended to this report, and these are being assessed along with the sites promoted through the call for sites. As indicated at paragraph 5.13, it's important to stress that the inclusion of these sites in the desktop review does not infer any support in principle to them going forward as site allocations. Full consideration of the evidence and the site assessments will inform the extent to which any may be suitable and appropriate in their context for consideration for the whole plan. And the green and blue infrastructure guiding principles, officers have worked collaboratively to create the guiding principles which will inform the local plan and other relevant work of the council. The full report's appended to the committee report. And finally, paragraph 5.16 of the report lists the evidence documents where work is well advanced and where this will be available in the near future for reporting and publishing. Members will be kept informed of these, and some may be summarised at the workshop sessions planned later this month, as well as the coming local plan meetings. And myself and others in the team happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandra. No, I'm not suggesting we go through this page by page, but there were some interesting pen pictures of all our settlements, and that was really interesting to read. Just for people who are maybe watching the live stream, the noise you can hear is not under attack, and we don't think a civil war has started. It is the fireworks display in Castle Park that you can hear. We hope. Okay, any contributions? Councillor Kirkby-Taylor.
Thank you. Right, so at the meeting last month, it was agreed that the evidence that has been supplied by the Safe and Middlewick people would be included in the evidence that we're including and looking at. Would the evidence-based update be a good place for us to actually put in black and white, this is where we are looking at it, and to say what it is we're looking at? Because we need some way, of providing ourselves a paper trail to say we are looking at it here, and we need some way of reassuring people that we are definitely taking it seriously and we are definitely going to be including their evidence. And it just seems like including a new section, publicly provided data, this would be the place to do it.
Sandra?
Yeah, I think there's no reason why a reference in the list of evidence can't include the evidence on Middlewick. I think that the evidence summary that's included in this report is the sort of generic evidence that's been commissioned sort of solely for the local plan, as we've sort of mentioned before. You know, the purpose, whilst the evidence on Middlewick, the ecological evidence of Middlewick will inform the local plan, that it has the opportunity to also inform other things, but there's no reason why in the future, just, you know, in amongst the list of evidence that's being gathered, a reference to that can't be added.
Thank you. Councillor Parsons?
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions, if I may. First on page 180, we've got water cycle study with initial outputs by autumn-winter 2024. Page 184, section 5, reports expected in the next few months. It doesn't include water cycle study. Obviously, we're in one of the most water-stressed parts of the country. That seems to be rather important. Could you tell us why it's got not happening early on, and are we going to have that by the time we get that initial consideration for February's meeting?
Thank you. So,
we'll certainly have the outputs of it to inform the local plan for February's meeting. Whether we'll have a report that's by December that's ready to fully publish, we're working with the consultants to ensure we have the information to inform the plan, and then there's sort of various obviously final quality checks and so on that they need to do before they're issued formally, which is what we need for them to be published. So we will have the evidence to inform what is reflected on the issues that come out of the water cycle study to inform the plan, and it will be published at the time that it's available. I think it's if it was not in the list, I think the ones we put in the list are the ones that we're absolutely confident will have sufficiently far advanced to publish at the time that they're indicated. Anything that isn't published, it will be available by the time the plan is considered by this committee.
Cutting to the chase here, so if an average person is using about 150 litres of water a day, we know average house occupancy, are we going to have by January from Anglian Water, this is how many houses current water supply as a ballpark figure roughly could sustain?
We will have that evidence through the water cycle study by the time the committee consider the preferred options plan, yes.
Okay, thank you. Second question, page 298, when we've got, this is a village profile on West Mersey, when we've got constraints, what's not listed is sea level rise. Now, there's a stretch of about 150 metres of coast road, so the opposite side of the island from the Strood, that is routinely flooded on spring tides, so every other week. Some of those houses are about 20-30 centimetres above the road height. Mid-range projections from the Climate Change Committee would suggest 25 to 35 centimetre sea level rise in the next 25 years. Should that not be a constraint that's listed there?
I think there is reference to flood risk being an issue. This is a high-level constraint. It's not intended to specify the extent exactly, you know, precisely where, but I think the general reference to flood risk is amongst the constraints. Already, it goes on to the next page, I think.
Okay, if I can just come back on that one. When I was knocking on doors during the local election on the street that is parallel to that, so City Road, one gentleman gave me quite a hard time, but he made some very fair points that Colchester Council had just given planning permission for one of those houses on Coast Road, 20-30 centimetres above the road height, which he said that's going to be, that the sea will be lapping up at it in 25 years' time. Those are the sort of issues that people are talking about and are likely to raise some concerns if it's not in there as a concern.
Understood. And in addition, there will be another piece of evidence that is mentioned is there will be a strategic flood risk assessment that will look provide an updated position on all of that, which will need to be taken into account in the consideration of the what's included in the plan.
And very quickly, the last one, when it does the village profiles, it talks about GPs, and you get the impression reading the profiles that the GP surgeries create an opportunity for development. The reality in the villages to the south of Colchester, Mersey Island practice has stopped registering any new patients, and they've actually put out a letter saying it's because of the recent housing developments they've had. Tolson Knights, which I know is just outside our area, but there's an overlap there. They've stopped taking new patients. Leia de la Haye are still taking patients from Leia, but they're not taking them from Mersey. That just leaves Rowhedge. So the impression that's created in the profiles is that these are opportunities. Should they not be seen as constraints when the GPs are actually saying we're not registering new patients even if they move into an existing dwelling?
I take the point. I think the purpose of the profile is recognising what the facilities are in each of the settlements, sort of comparatively with other settlements. This is only one part of the picture, and there will be the infrastructure audit and the infrastructure delivery plan will drill down into far more detail in respect of the relative capacities of existing facilities. So,
thank you, Martin. Any other points anybody wishes to make? Councillor Ellis.
Just quickly, when are we next meeting with parishes to go through, before we see the sites that you're selecting, or there are going to be some, and quite a few. When are you next going to meet with parish councils to discuss those with them? Just so I've got a timetable to talk to them about. Assuming that you're going to have a discussion with them before we see the preferred sites.
there may be a need for some sort of more individual discussions with town and parish councils, but there are There has been dates sent out to the town and parish councils for briefings, offering 2 dates on the 17th and 18th of December, where they'll be invited to sign up to one or the other. It will be the same briefing. If there's a need for anything more individual, then they'll be followed up separately.
Can't think of anything better than a pre-Christmas jolly like that, can you?
Oh, welcome.
But it's there, the opportunity's there. Andrew, do you want to come back?
There are some parishes, I mean, some have been mentioned this evening actually, where it might be worth sitting down, I think ward members and officers and parish councils and the neighbourhood plan teams, it would be worth sitting down before we take it to the next stage, if that's possible.
It's about capacity and resource, I guess, Sandra, isn't it?
It is, I get that.
It is, which is why I was suggesting that some may need it. I think we won't be doing what we did last time, earlier on in the process, where we, encouraged every single parish council to meet individually with officers, but where it's helpful to engage further, then I think we will be following that up.
Okay.
I think it's better to be collaborative with them rather than adversarial, which it could become.
Absolutely, but I think they've got to understand the capacity of resource with all the parish councils we've got in Colchester City. Then, I'm sure we can find some way of engaging well with them. Any other points? Yes, Councillor Kelly.
This is a small point on the way, the little summaries you've done on the individual settlements. When you're talking about the demographic makeup of each of those places, and you sort of said there's this many children, this many over 70, and obviously you can sort of extrapolate this many in between. Would it be possible, for the purposes of our consideration in this sort of thing, to include what the change has been, so that we can see whether or not a settlement is getting older or getting younger? Because obviously that would give a good idea as to the types of housing that was needed or not needed in that environment. Because as it is, it's a snapshot. It doesn't really tell you whether or not, like Wivenhoe, for example, is getting older, as is, in fact, Colchester is getting older, in fact. But I'm sure there are some places that are not necessarily getting older, because the averages can only be working like that. So is that something that would be possible to include so that we could see it?
Sandra?
I think a lot of that will be in the housing needs assessment evidence, which looks more at the change that's occurred, and that for these parish profiles, this data has been obviously drawn from the census. So I think those kind of the implications of change and how that affects different areas and what that might mean for what's needed, I think will come more through the other evidence.
Okay. So it will be that, because directing you to where it is, I think, yeah. Any other points? Then we're asked to note progress made on the evidence base to support the Colchester local plan review. Noted. Thank you very much. I think that's it. Thank you very much for attending this evening, and have a safe journey home. And I hope your pets are all right, those who have pets, with all the fireworks going off. Thank you, officers, and have a good evening.